So about 6 or 7 years ago, I was hanging out with some friends in New York City, and I got a buzz on my phone, and I was surprised to find that my grandmother had texted me. My grandmother at the time was 83 years old. She had grown up without a phone, and now she had an iPhone. And I will tell you, her first message to me was adorable. It read, "Dear Andrew, trying out texting, love your grandma." It's like, aw, she thinks it's a letter. Right? So I sent her a message back and I was like, "Hey grandma, you don't have to include all that." Her response was, "Dear Andrew, okay, love your grandma." My favorite part is that it was always "love your grandma," because if it was like "glove grandma," I'd be confused. She's like, "Dear Andrew, have a good time in Germany." I'd be, "love grandma." I'd be like, "Grandma? Whose grandma?" Right? My grandma, your grandma, a creepy dude named Grandma. But my grandmother has gotten a little bit better at texting. She hasn't quite figured out everything, though. I was in Switzerland a couple of years ago doing some work, came back, sent a message to my grandmother. "Hey, Grandma, just got back from Switzerland." Her response was, "Dear Andrew, Switzerland, ? WTF?" Right? So I called my grandmother up and I was like, "Grandma, what do you think WTF means?" And she's like, "Oh, well, someone in Bridge told me it means, wow, that's fun." I was like, that is exactly what it means. Because I'm not going to explain that to my grandmother. But I've actually come to believe that I think the world would actually be a little bit of a better place if we all thought WTF like my grandmother, if we all thought a little bit more, wow, that's fun. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's how we can take that mentality of wow, that's fun and apply it to the workplace. Not just so that it is more fun, but so that we actually get better results. And I'm incredibly excited to be here in Germany for the very first time. I'm excited to be here because I am obsessed with efficiency. Ever since I can remember, or really since before I can remember, because I was born 3 weeks early. Apparently, even in the womb, I was like, I don't need a full 9 months. I'm ready to go right now. Right? Let's do this, Mom. Right? Obsessed with efficiency. I remember in school thinking that smart for me was getting a 93% in all of my classes. Because in the States, a 93% is the lowest grade you can get and still get an A, get the top marks, right? So I was always shooting for a 93%. And it got to the point that if I got a 94, 95, or worst case scenario, 100%, I was upset. Because it meant that I did more work than I had to do, right? Obsessed with efficiency. So I went on to The Ohio State University, got a degree in computer science and engineering, and after I graduated, I started working at Procter & Gamble as an IT project manager. And it was at P&G that I started to realize that there is a difference between being efficient and being effective. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's a difference between being efficient and being effective, because we can be efficient with things like computers. We don't need to motivate a computer to work. We don't need to convince it to turn on. It doesn't need a cup of coffee before it starts in the morning. Right? But we can't be efficient with humans because humans have emotions and feelings. Told you don't have to put those things in quotes, right? So we can't be efficient with humans. Instead, we have to be effective. And so that's part of the reason why I'm excited to be here in Germany, because at least the stereotype in the U.S. is that Germans are efficient. Right? And everything that they do, they are efficient. So I appreciate being around other people that love efficiency. But also, hopefully, you are focused on effectiveness, right? You want to do the things that actually get results. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that I can speak to you in English because I am like your typical American in that I don't speak any other languages. Actually, I don't even speak English. I speak American. Because I didn't know this. It took me going to the UK to realize that there is a difference between British English and American English. I didn't realize that, right? Because in the UK, they say lift. In the US, we say elevator. In the UK, they say buggy. In the US, we say cart. In the US, we say pants. I didn't know that, but in the UK, that means underwear. Did not know that. I got onto the tube in London. This older woman got on. She had these really cool jeans on. And I was like, oh my God, I love your pants. And she was like, really? language is different. I didn't even realize that. In fact, actually, I was talking to a couple of people yesterday about this. Like, whenever I travel somewhere and I hear words that I like, I try to adopt them as well. Like, I like in the UK and in Europe in general, if you're out somewhere, you will say toilets, right? Excuse me, where are the toilets, right? It'll say a sign, where are the toilets? That makes a lot of sense. In the US, we will say bathroom. No matter where we are, we'll say, excuse me, where is the bathroom? And very rarely is there ever a bath in that room. Right? So it's like, I want to adopt that. I want to start to use that. I was in New York City. I was at Starbucks. I went up to the barista, and I was like, excuse me, where are your toilets? And she was confused. She was like, in the bathroom? Doesn't always work. Right? So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that I can speak to you all in English. I'm excited to share this message with all of you because it's been a fantastic day. Sitting off to the side, certainly it was very heartwarming for me to see that Germans do have a sense of humor, right? You do laugh. You were laughing at a lot of different things that I didn't understand. Right? I did get Brexit and the other jokes there, but there's also a lot of other things that I didn't get. But you're laughing, you're enjoying it, and I was watching the engagement on your faces. I know that this is, even if I don't understand half the content, I know that this is a fantastic conference. So I'm excited to be a part of it. I did also realize, even though I don't speak German, I did think that I could customize my presentation for you a little bit. So this is your customization. Added that extra U in there. Get the British spelling of humor, which, again, less efficient to spell it that way. Unnecessary letter, but you guys own that, whatever. Right, so that's your customization for the day. Now, we are talking about humor, so it is important for me to start with a disclaimer. So if you guys could read that and hit I accept, that would be fantastic. But basically, the summary or the too long didn't read version of this is to say that I have never actually worked in your companies. I've never worked in your roles. I've never worked in Germany or with some of the clients that you have worked with. What I have done is work with over 250 organizations all around the world on how to use humor to be more effective. So everything that I say today, it might not completely apply to what you do, but my goal is, my hope is that from the 30 minutes that we have together, that you walk away with at least one idea. One concept, one exercise, one phrase, whatever it is, one idea. Maybe it's something brand new to you, or maybe it's a reminder of something that you've heard before, but one thing that you want to implement as a result of this talk. Because that's what matters to me as an engineer. I hope that we have fun, I hope that we laugh, but more important is that you do something differently as a result of the talk today. So that's what I would encourage you to be on the lookout for, is that one idea. Because by show of hands, how many of you are looking to constantly learn? Okay. Is there anyone who's done learning? Anyone who's like, nope, brain is full? No, right? We're constantly trying to learn. We're constantly trying to grow, to try to improve, to get better. And it's something that we need to do because the workplace is rapidly changing and we haven't, as humans, adapted to it. Because 83% of employees are stressed out at work. 55% of employees are unsatisfied with their jobs, and 47% of employees struggle to stay happy. Of course, it's even worse in Disney World, where statistically, only 1 out of 7 dwarfs is happy. That's just statistics. I mean, 1 out of 7 is a doctor, so that's not bad, right? But it leads to 70% of the workforce being disengaged, costing the U.S. economy up to $500 billion in lost productivity every single year, right? So in the U.S., it's $500 billion in lost productivity every single year. If you do the math on that, 70% of Americans being disengaged, the math settles out to $4,672 per disengaged employee. So you start to realize the economic impact for an organization or for a country because of disengagement. So what it tells us is that the current way of working isn't actually working. And when you consider that the average person will work 90,000 hours in their lifetime, right? 90,000 hours. That is more than everything that is on Netflix. That is a long time, right? 90,000 hours, you start to realize that the current way of living isn't really living. But luckily, we have humor. People who use humor in the workplace are more productive, they are less stressed, and they are happier. This is me on the end right here. Right? Even though I have a boo-boo on my head, I'm still so happy. Right? Now, I will admit, I work with a lot of more conservative organizations in the U.S. and around the world, and when I'm talking with senior leaders and they hear that humor will make them more productive, less stressed, and happier, I will admit that some people are a little bit skeptical. right? Most people think of humor as a nice to have. Is there anyone here who hates to laugh? Anyone who's like, no, I hate feeling joy in my body? No, right? People like to laugh. They think of it as a nice to have. Oh, if I enjoyed my work a little bit more, that would be nice, but if not, it's not a priority. But the reality is that in today's overworked, underappreciated, stress-filled, sleep-deprived world, humor is a must-have. Humor is a necessity in order for us to be able to manage the emotions that we have in the workplace, in a workplace where our emotions impact our ability to get things done. Why use humor? Well, using humor, it gets people to listen. It increases long-term memory retention, improves understanding, aids in learning, and helps communicate messages. It also improves group cohesiveness, reduces status differentials, diffuses conflict, builds trust, and brings people closer together. It does this stuff, and these things, and on and on and on and on. And it's all backed by research, case studies, and real-world examples. Right? I didn't make this up. These are some impressive benefits that you see, right? Reduces status differentials, builds trust, and increases attractiveness. Hey. It also provides a boost of energy. It burns calories. In fact, 10 to 15 minutes of laughter burns as many calories as 5 minutes of aerobic exercise, 10 minutes of dancing, or 15 minutes of milking a cow. I don't know what you guys do in Germany, but if you are milking cows for exercise, you can stop. Or I guess you could also laugh while milking a cow and burn double the calories, right? Then you're probably going to get locked up, right? You probably get locked up if you do that. Increases happiness, increases the size of paycheck. In one study, they found executives who used humor were paid more. And in fact, it was positively correlated. So the more humor they used, the more money they were paid, right? Tremendous benefits to using humor in the workplace. But it's not just the benefits that we get. Let me ask you guys a question. You can tell me whether you agree or disagree with this statement. Agree or disagree with this statement. You are responsible for your own happiness. Agree or disagree? Agree. Right? You are responsible for your own happiness. That means if you have a project at work that you do not enjoy, you are responsible for it. If you have coworkers or clients that you have to interact with that you don't like, you are responsible for it. If you dread Monday morning, you are responsible for it. Note that this does not say that you control your own happiness, but you are responsible for your own happiness. So sometimes the change that you need to make might be the situation itself, or it might need to be the perspective, how you approach something, how you view something. You are responsible. You decide every single day when you wake up how you are going to approach your day. So if you aren't enjoying what you do, in effect, you are deciding not to enjoy it. Right? It comes down to an important choice. And I would encourage you to choose humor. So let's talk about it. How do you choose humor? Because one thing to understand about humor is that it is more broad than comedy. A lot of times when we think about humor, we think of laughter, which is great. But humor is defined as a comic, absurd, or incongruous quality causing amusement. So comedy is included, but it's also something that's a little bit silly or maybe something a little bit different. We're not necessarily causing laughter, but maybe a smile. So these are a couple of examples of, I think, effective humor. This first one is from Tired Discounters. Family owned. Shut up. No, you shut up. I feel like that's a pretty good sign. Next one was in an office. You don't have to be crazy to work here. We'll train you. Pretty good. This was a sign in a park in Norway. To me, it makes me smile because it's the only stick figure I've ever seen with a butt. Right? It's something different. This next one was from a physics textbook. And this one isn't necessarily laugh out loud hysterical, but it is something different. And if I had physics problems like this and growing up in school, I might have tried for more than a 93%. Because I don't care what the force of a random ball hitting a wall is, but I do care what the force of the Batman hitting the Joker is. So it's just thinking about changing things a little bit. So when we're talking about humor in the workplace, we're not talking about making the workplace funny. We're talking about a way of working that is different, effective, and fun. Changing that perspective a little bit. Because it is a mindset, right? It's a choice that we make. It's also a mindset. Because it's not that funny things happen to funny people, it's that funny people see the world in a funny way. It's about how you look at things. So how do we actually use humor? Can you learn to use humor? I will tell you that I have done over 1,000 shows as a stand-up comedian, improviser, storyteller, spoken word artist. I've spoken or performed in all 50 states and now 21 countries with Germany and on one planet. Recently, I went to my high school reunion, and people who I grew up with found out that I did comedy, and they're like, but you're not funny. In some ways, they were right, because I would tell you, this is not the face of funny. Right? There's a lot that is funny about this picture. None of it is intentional. Right? I don't know if you guys had this fad here, but I had the blonded tips up top, like I wanted to be in a boy band. I'm wearing clothes that are far too baggy for me. The theme for this dance was Into a Dream. I am no one's dream in this picture. Right? Because growing up, I was never the life of the party or the class clown. My senior year, I was voted teacher's pet. If you know your personality assessments, I am a type A, blue square, conscientious INTJ with the sign of Aquarius. That means I am a stubborn, ambitious introvert who likes long walks on the beach by myself. But what I've learned is that we are not our personality assessments. Personality assessment is only a single assessment at a single point in time, and it might give us insight into our behavior, or tell us what motivates us, or tell us which Disney princess we are. Pocahontas. But it doesn't define us, right? We are defined by our actions, and so if we act as a humorist, we become a humorist, and that's what happened to me. In college, my best friend there in the middle wanted to start an improv comedy group. He needed people and forced me to join. And as you can tell from this picture, we were not very good. At least when we first started, we had no idea what we were doing. We watched Whose Line Is It Anyway and tried to repeat what we saw. And what I didn't have in comedy skill, I made up for in comedy project management. And I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it for real. Right? We're going to practice 3 times a week. We're going to have a business meeting every Monday. And we're going to film all of our shows and go back and watch it as if it was game tape. Try to figure out what made people laugh, what didn't make them laugh. And over the course of 2 years, we got better. With practice and repetition, just like anything, you get better through practice and repetition. It's a skill. It can be learned. And we can learn how to apply it as a strategy. We can be smart about applying because, again, it's not just about being funny for the sake of being funny, but for about getting specific results. And we can use that as a strategy by thinking about something called our humor map. Our humor map stands for our medium, audience, and purpose. Where your medium is how are you going to execute that humor? Is it in an email? Is it in a marketing campaign? Is it one-on-one in a conversation with a coworker or with a client? Right? What medium are you actually going to use? Because we know the medium impacts the message, right? Music is best enjoyed with your ears. This song was #1 in America for 9 weeks. It was nominated for 2 Grammys. It was not because of its lyrical content, right? You see me, I be work. That doesn't even make sense. Not even grammatically correct. But it's Rihanna, right? And you hear that it's a catchy song. You start to understand. When you hear it, you start to understand, okay, wow, it's a better song when you hear it. The medium impacts the message. That isn't to say that music can't be done in different forms. This is an ad from Aldi that I think is pretty good. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa. Lemon on a pear. Terrible singing, very good ad. Right? So the medium impacts the message. Next thing to understand is our audience, right? And this is who is going to receive that humor, because who receives it makes a difference, right? You need to understand what your audience knows, what they need, what they expect, and what your relationship is to them. You know, a joke that you can make with some very close friends is a very different joke that you make with someone that you're meeting for the very first time, because we want to make sure that we understand their language, that we talk with them. And this is why it's a challenge for me, not speaking any other languages. Because I have a friend of mine was trying to teach me some Tagalog, some Filipino. And I kept on trying to say some words, and she was laughing at me. And she's like, you can't do it. You have baby American lips. I don't know what that means, but I have baby American. I have a dumb mouth. I can't pronounce certain words. In fact, do you guys have the stereotype here where French people don't like to speak English in France? You know that, right? Yeah, I heard that a lot. So I was in France. I was traveling there, and I heard that a lot of like, they don't want to have to speak English. It's their country. Speak French, all that. So I tried to learn French a little bit. And I was like, I need to have at least one interaction in French while I'm there. So I decided I was at going to get like a coffee shop, and I was like, all right, I want to order a croissant and some water in French. So I attempted like, poussez-vous croissant de un de ou? Whatever that was came out, right? And the barista responded, she's like, oh, your French is very good. And I was like, wow, it must be because I understood what you said. And then I realized she said it to me in English. And that's where I learned if you want a French person to speak English to you, just butcher their language so bad. They're like, I would rather speak English than hear you ruin this language. Right? So you have to understand your audience. You have to try to speak their language if you can. What I've tried to learn now is that I just try to learn the word English in whatever language and then say it with an apology face. Like I was just in the Czech Republic, and I could not remember, English in Czech is anglicky, and I could not remember it. And then I talked to another American who was living there, and he's like, listen, this is how you think about it. Imagine you are on skis that have glitter on them. You are on glit skis. I'm like, that is brilliant, it works. So then I would go into place, and I'd be like, unglitski? And be like, you're an idiot, let's talk in English, right? Have to understand your audience, speak their language, and humor can be a great part of that language. And finally, the last part of the humor map is, what is your purpose? Why are you using humor? Because humor for the sake of humor is great, but there's so many other benefits that we can be more deliberate, more strategic about that process. And we can apply it across what we at Humor That Works call the 5 areas of work, right? No matter what you do, work boils down to these 5 things. Can you execute a task? Can you actually do something? Can you think strategically, solve problems? Can you communicate your ideas? Can you be verbally fluent? Can you relate to humans because we work with humans? And finally, can you lead? Can you influence people? No matter what your role is, you do those 5 things. So we can apply humor to each one of those. We can use humor as a way to execute faster. As an engineer, I am obsessed with efficiency and productivity. I've done a lot of research on productivity, and I've learned one thing, is that it is very difficult to be productive if you are dead. Very difficult to be productive if you are dead, or if you feel like death, right? If you're sick, if you're tired, if you're burned out, stressed out, worn out, difficult to be productive. So we can use humor as a way to relieve stress. We can also use humor as a way to keep engaged in our work. And this is a beautiful thing about executing faster, is that it doesn't matter what other people do. Sometimes I talk with groups and they say, yeah, but my manager wouldn't approve of humor. There's certain things that you can do that no one else can control. Like one of the things that I like to do, if I start to get bored while reading emails, I'll start to read each of the emails in a different accent in my head. I got some emails from the UBX team that I attempted to read in a German accent. It was not pretty. But it kept me more engaged. And the beautiful thing is no one can stop me from doing that. No one can come up to me and be like, hey, you're reading emails in an accent in your head. Stop it. Right? No one can prevent you from listening to a comedy podcast on your way home from work so that you show up more present for your family when you get there. Right? There's certain choices that you can make about your own work to be able to execute faster, to do things quicker, or to stay engaged in that work a little bit longer. We can use humor as a way to think smarter, because humor and creativity are sometimes about just finding unique connections in the world. So these are some shower thoughts from Reddit, some just different perspectives, right? There are 2 types of hotel guests in the world, those who ask when tomorrow's breakfast begins and those who ask when it ends. I ask when it ends, right? I don't like mornings. I don't mind mornings, I just don't want to be awake for them. The next one is falling down is the same thing as being hit by a planet. That's a good perspective. Like if you ever trip and fall and someone asks how you're doing, you can be like, pretty good for being hit by a planet. I will admit this last one is weird. The only part of your reflection you can lick is your tongue. It's weird. But you're going to walk by a mirror later. And like, it's true. Right? Just different way of seeing the world. So we can use humor as a way to unlock that idea. In one study, they found that students who watched a 30-minute comedy video before trying to solve a problem were nearly 4 times more likely to solve that problem because it's just warming up the brain. So how can you do that when you're doing an ideation session with a client? How can you use humor as a way to unlock some of that creativity? We can use humor as a way to communicate better. The average person sends and receives 112 emails per day and spends up to 80% of their time in some form of active communication. So we can use humor to actually get them to pay attention. Things like this sign. Something a little bit different. Right? Or this recruitment ad that was in a magazine. Like, look at his feet just hanging there. Right? If you're flipping through a magazine, you're going to stop on this page. Like, what is this about, right? So this is why it's valuable in marketing for communicating. We can also use it as a way to improve understanding. This is from an ad in a dentist's office. You know immediately what this group does, right? You know right away what they do because it's an association as positive, makes you smile. It can improve understanding. We can use humor as a way to relate closer. Right? Consistent use of humor makes people want to be around us even more, so you can use that to your own advantage. I used to send jokes at the end of all of my emails as a project manager because it got people to actually read them. We used to start every meeting with an interesting question so that people, 1, would actually want to come to the meeting, and 2, so that you could get to know the people. You can do this as a brand as well. Brands can use humor as a way to get people to build rapport with them. So, for example, The Hustle is a newsletter in the U.S., a daily newsletter that gives different insight into the news, but they do a startup dictionary that is humorous, right? They say things like a thought leader is an authoritative voice in the field of expertise, the loudest voice in a field of expertise, or when you don't have credentials, but you do have opinions. They're a thought leader, right? Or circle back when you don't want to discuss a topic now or ever again. Hey, let's circle back to that idea sometime. Right? So they use humor as a way to build rapport with their audience to say, oh, I want to actually click on that email because I know it's going to be funny. And finally, we can use humor as a way to lead further. People who use humor are seen as being better leaders, particularly in stressful situations, whether or not they actually are. Right? The perception is that if they're using humor in a difficult situation, they must be in control, they must be willing to lead. So we can do things like, I was coaching a client on using knock-knock jokes. I found out that his kids love knock-knock jokes. So I said, you should start each one of your monthly meetings with one of your kids' favorite knock-knock jokes. And he's like, that's dumb. And I was like, I'm coaching you, try it. Right? And just give it a go. He came back to me and he was like, actually, it worked. The people really liked it. People came up to me afterwards and they gave me their own favorite knock-knock jokes. And it wasn't the knock-knock jokes that worked. It was the fact that he started with something human. It was the fact that he reminded all of his employees at the very beginning that he was a father first. And that he has kids, and that, of course, they're knock-knock jokes. They're great. Do you guys know knock-knock jokes, the format and everything? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, you know it? No, kind of? Who knows it? Okay, so will you do this with me? Okay, so knock-knock.
Who's there?
Yoda lady. And then you say Yoda lady who? You don't want it. Okay, so this is a knock-knock joke format. One person says knock-knock. The other person says who's there. First person says Yoda lady or whatever, that person has to repeat it. So if I say Yoda lady, then you say Yoda lady who? And I say, oh, I didn't know you could yodel. So it's all set up just to make, we're going to talk about this later. We don't have time to deep dive into knock-knock jokes. Trust me, it's great. It's silly, right? They're silly kids jokes, but it creates humor. We'll come back to this, right? The last point that we're going to drive to is that, again, it comes to you. Comes to how you decide every single day. So I'm a project manager by training, so that means every meeting has to end on next steps. I call them action items because I think it sounds cooler, right? Before we do that, real quick, this is a recap of what we've talked in 30 minutes. Again, this is our pyramid of work. These are the 5 things that you have to do. It starts first with the fact that humor is a choice. How you do your work every single day is a choice. We can make a choice about the mindset of humor. It's a way that we approach the world. It's about us looking at the world and saying, how do I find more fun in that activity? And we can be strategic about it, applying the humor map so that we actually get better results across these 5 areas of work. Your action item is to start. This is a terrible, vague action item. I understand that. But it really does come down to a choice that you make. One thing that I will encourage you to do is think about 1 smile per hour as a starting point. What is one thing that you can do each hour of the workday and even at home that you can do that will either bring a smile to your face or the face of someone else? Whether it's asking a question, whether it is sharing a TED Talk that you really enjoyed, whether it's just simply getting to know people a little bit better, trying out a knock-knock joke once you learn what it is and if you actually like it. Right? One thing that you can do each hour to bring joy, and that gets us way past our 6 minutes. Right? You do it once every hour, that gets you at least, well, you're going to sleep for some of them, so it gets you probably 18 minutes at least. Maybe more. And then you're burning calories, right? Then you're relieving stress. You're decreasing the muscle tension in your body, all of these benefits of humor. And anyone can learn how to do this. I will tell you that the funniest person that I know is still my grandmother, my texting grandmother. And she has elevated her game from texting to now Facebook. And I like puns. I like tweeting jokes and one-liners. In fact, if you like puns, you can follow me at Drew Tarvin. If you like that kind of stuff, it's all I do basically on social media. And my grandmother has started commenting on every single one of my posts. And I can't tell if my grandmother is the nicest, most sincere, kindest grandmother in the world, or if she is secretly trolling me. So a while back, I posted, I'm trying to decide if I should become an athlete or a criminal, so I made a list of pros and cons. I know, right? My grandmother's response was one word: funny. Does she mean that? I don't know. So then I posted, I think a cozy bar that serves figs would make for a plum date spot. It's a little double pun. She just rolled her eyes at me, right? Yeah. It's a bad pun, right? My grandmother's response was ha, comma, ha. And there's like something about the comma where I'm like, I think that's sarcastic. Then a little while later, I posted, converting the numbers 51, 6, and 500 to Roman numerals makes me livid. My grandmother's response was, hey, this one is actually good. Trolled by my own grandmother. It doesn't matter your age, your income, your race, your background, your role, your function, your experience at a company. You decide every single day how you are going to choose how you approach that day, what work you are going to do. So why not choose to be more productive, less stressed, and happier? Why not choose to get better results and have more fun? Why not choose humor that works? I've been Drew Tarvin. You guys have been great. Thank you very much.